Thanks for joining this morning. My name is Joe Stafford, and I'm the Director of Animal Welfare for the Colorado Department of Agriculture. Our division is responsible for the administration of the Equine Welfare Assistance Grant, and I'm really looking forward to providing you all with additional information about the grant and hope to put these funds in the hands of people that can help improve equine welfare across the state of Colorado. I expect this initial presentation to last about 10 to 15 minutes. And my hope is that you'll be able to place any questions you have into the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen. And then following the formal presentation, we'll either one, answer your questions, or two, get back with you in a timely manner. So let's go ahead and jump in. My goal today will be to provide you all, as well as the individuals that are going to view or refer to the recording that should be available tomorrow, with several key topics, and those include the background and purpose, the timeline, the guidelines, the application process, review process, invoice, and reporting. And most of what I will cover today is included in the grant materials, which is published on our webpage for this grant. Again, this should take about 10 to 15 minutes. Please place those questions into the Q&A, and we'll do our best to answer those questions. So as most of you know, House Bill 24-1458, which was signed by Governor Polis on May 30th of 2024, did several things. First, it created the Division of Animal Welfare. It authorized a Division of Animal Welfare Director and Education and Outreach Specialist. It also funded a BAP, or Bureau of Animal Protection, West Slope investigator, as well as a Bureau of Animal Protection administrator. And I'm happy to say that as of next Monday, the 21st of October, all of those positions would be or will be filled. The funding authorized by this bill became available on July 1st, 2024. And of course, the bill allocated and authorized funding for $200,000 to improve equine welfare in Colorado. The bill also required us to engage stakeholders and experts to advise on the program's focus, eligibility, and criteria. In addition, we also received the approval of the Ag Commission, which was required by the bill. The grant application was opened on October 9th. And of course, we're doing the informational webinar today. We'll close the grant application on November 6th. And I really realize that this is a very short time period, and I wish we had more time to allow grantees to formulate the response. But the most important element of this grant is to get these funds into the hands of the organizations that can help equines across Colorado. From there, we expect the selection panel, which has yet to be finalized, will complete the review by December 2nd, 2024, and I'm committed to ensuring a fair and equitable process. The selections will be completed by the commissioner. So the panel will make recommendations, and then those recommendations will be sent to Kate Greenberg, the Commissioner of Agriculture, who will make the final decisions, hopefully by December 3rd. We will notify grantees between about the 12th of December and the 18th of December. And again, this is an aggressive timeline, especially when we consider this will all be taking place over the Thanksgiving holiday, when most people are trying to spend time with family and friends. And again, just in advance, I want to thank the panelists for their time and effort and sacrifices they'll need to make in order to get this process completed within this timeline. And we'll strive to complete the procurement process by January 25th. So notifications going out starting on about the 12th, ending on the 18th, and then all of the paperwork getting done as quickly as we can, and getting the contracts in place and getting these funds made available by as early in January as I can. And then lastly, not lastly, but this is a very important point, the end of the grant period and all funds must be expended by June 30th of 25. And I can't express the importance of this timeline enough. I'm just asking that individuals don't overextend yourselves, your organization, or your customers. And lastly, I'm going to expect your final grant report to be submitted by August 25th. And I want this funding really to become a permanent opportunity that's available on an annual basis. But I'm really going to need your support and help in making that happen. So the feedback we received from the 88 respondents clearly indicated that the grant's focus should be on education and outreach projects. And at present, this could be training programs, this could be printed educational materials, this could be communication, education planning, this could be training equipment or supplies, it could be educating youth, the education of investigators, the education of the general public, and all education efforts will be considered by the review panel. The second area of focus for the grant is emergency and routine veterinarian services, and this could be estimated expenditures for, again, either routine or emergency vet care, end-of-life services, farrier services, etc. The last category is shelter and transport costs, and this could be costs associated with intake, care, and rehoming of equines, constructions or enhancements to infrastructures, feed banks, trailers or equipment associated with transportation. It could be an emergency response to a cruelty or neglect situation or a natural disaster, and it could be other shelter and transport support projects or other emergencies. Some of the eligible expense would be salaries of any new staff and increased staff hours for existing part-time staff. So for example, if you had a part-time employee that worked 20 hours and you wanted to use the funding from this grant to have them work 40 hours, that would be perfectly acceptable, or to pay contractors. Of course, we're going to be paying for the direct costs of your projects, veterinarian expenses, contractor payments, and we just ask that the indirect costs, so overhead things of this nature, just not exceed 5% of the grant award. In this grant cycle, we're not looking to fund research projects or individual owners or companies for the care of privately owned equines. And these are the basic grant requirements. Very important that everyone understands and can adhere to these requirements. Of course, we're going to ask for the applicant's information, that you be in good standing with the Secretary of State. We're going to try to keep the application to no more than 12 pages. And again, these panelists are going to have their hands full reviewing these grants in a very short time period. So we want to keep those as short and condensed as we can. We're going to need, your W-9, proof of insurance as may be required, an electronic funds transfer form, or otherwise known as an EFT, and this is how you'll get paid. We want to, again, ensure a fair and equitable process. We're going to need a statement of no conflict, or if there is some type of conflict, that be clearly disclosed. You're going to have to accept the small dollar grant award terms and conditions. And lastly, please know that your application will become public information. Above all else, we value transparency and equitable, making this an equitable process. So I'm going to want a comprehensive project summary from you. It must include, of course, some goals and outcomes of your efforts, the scope of the work, the timeline, a detailed budget. Minimum grant is going to be $10,000 and a maximum grant of $100,000. And this is one question that's already came in. If you had 3 projects and you could fund all 3 of those projects for $10K, please include that in one grant, and we would consider that meeting that minimum qualification. Same thing for the maximum as well. We're going to ask that it be submitted to, of course, the email address that's on the screen. And in this first year of the grant, I'm really looking, trying to open this up as widely as we can to really get a good idea of what projects are out there and what this grant might be able to fund in the future as well. So the criteria that the selection panel will consider are going to be the impact. We'll want you to describe the intended impact of the project on domestic equine welfare, discuss any long-lasting impact of the project. Is this part of a bigger project? And how does this project expand or relate to your current work? We're going to want to look at your approach and the methodology and the plan, making sure that they're thorough and they make it clear what your stated objectives are and that they can be met within the proposed budget and timeline. The project team is robust and includes necessary stakeholders. The proposed timeline and deliverables are realistic and can be delivered again by that June 30th of 2025 deadline. We're going to look at the experience the applicant has on related projects, grant management, working with domestic equines and the communities that may be targeted. Evaluate the benefits and how the project will support, of course, Colorado domestic equine and the communities around that. We want to look at the project's diversity, and we intend to prioritize projects in diverse geographies around Colorado, different types of projects and projects with differing outcomes. We want to look at the application budget is thorough and well constructed. The proposal includes any relevant quotes from contractors. And we'll be looking for innovations. What innovations will this grant bring about in the domestic equine welfare population? How it will further the understanding and the benefits and the cost of domestic equine welfare, including what gaps will be filled by the project. And lastly, the invoicing and reporting requirements. Again, just want to emphasize that these funds must be expended by June 30th. If that is not going to happen, I would just ask that you communicate with us proactively. And if those funds are not going to be expended, we have the opportunity to use the funds elsewhere. And if you're unable to carry the cost involved in the grant for the full 6-month period, January to June of next year, we will allow invoices to be submitted at both that 3-month and 6-month time period. And I'm going to need to know that we will have your full cooperation to evaluate the success of your grant and the program. I completely understand that there will be challenges. It's a normal part of the process. Just please communicate about any major successes and challenges in a proactive manner. And in the final deliverables, what we would like to see is ultimately what was accomplished, any metrics you might have to demonstrate the impact of the project, stories, especially with pictures and videos, that's always extra points, and equally important, any lessons learned, and any additional information that you think might be important. And this was a very quick and I hope efficient rundown of what has already been communicated via our website and provided materials. And I'm happy to attempt to answer any questions you may have about any specific ideas or projects you have in mind, or just any general questions as well. So it looked like we have one question in the Q&A right now. Is there a match requirement? There is not a match requirement. You don't have to have any money to put in. Of course, if you do have matching funds, and we can make our dollars go further, that's something we definitely encourage. But again, that's not a requirement of the grant. The next question is about the $200,000 in the first year. Might that amount increase in following years? At present, we have funding for the next 3 fiscal years. There has not been any discussion of increasing that total amount. And then there was a question to repeat the facility examples. Let me try to get back to that slide so I can. And on that question, the facility examples, can you provide a little more information on that, Nina, so I understand the nature of your question? The next question is the minimum request is $10,000. The maximum request allowed is going to be $100,000. Amy had a question about if the shelter support and transportation section, does that include the cost for feed? Yes, absolutely. Any care associated with domestic equines while you're caring for them, anything involved in the care of those equines while they're in your care, and then also efforts to rehome any horses will be included. And Nikki, I'm not sure if you're in a better spot to answer Bill's question. He's asking, will larger projects, could there be monthly payments?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure. Sorry. So on the grant guidelines, it has some guidance on that you must submit invoices at least quarterly, but you definitely can do monthly to help with that process. We understand.
There was a question about if we submit for a combination for educational and emergency care, would you consider those asks separately? I think if they meet the minimum $10,000 requirements, we could consider those separately. Ideally, I think for panelists, we would like to consider one request from each organization, but if we had 2 very separate asks, that would meet the requirements, I think we could consider those separately, meaning we could fund one and not fund the other, or fund both. Yeah, and there's just some questions about the requirements of the organization without having a lot of experience. And really what we're trying to do this first year of the grant is open it up as widely as we possibly can to see what the need out there is. And I think that's going to help inform, future years of the grant that we currently have available. And then if this should become a long-term type of grant, it will help inform those efforts going forward. Question about, does this grant exclude Mustangs that have been gentled and are used for equine assisted healing or therapy programs? Absolutely not. Any horse that's been domesticated, meaning any equine that has lost its wild status, could be considered in this program. So it's not going to exclude Mustangs. It does not address wild horses or equines. If it's now a domestic animal program, it is available. Question, Nikki, about is it a reimbursement grant or paid up front? And I think this is a reimbursement grant, but
That is
just want to
correct.
clarify.
Yes, it is reimbursement based.
So the other question, does training wild horses for adoptability and domestication qualify? I would say once the horse has lost its wild status, it would qualify. Just trying to read through some of the other questions here. Well, Olga, can we make the slides available on the web page after we're done here today?
Absolutely.
Okay. And Kim, you're asking about consider the 2 Mile High Club caretakers of the Cripple Creek donkeys, domestic equines. I would need more information to answer that question because I'm not familiar with the 2 Mile High Club. If you wanted to send more information via the email that's on the last slide, which I can hopefully flip back to here. I'd be happy to do a little research and try to answer that question. Do education programs focus on the proper feeding, care, shelter, and handling and therapeutic work of equines qualify? I would say absolutely. Can you state what losing its wild status means? So if the horse is been brought in and its future is to find a domestic home, meaning it's going to be adopted or otherwise put into a home as a companion animal or a companion horse or a working horse, that's where I think it loses its wild status, meaning the grant was not intended to feed wild horses out on the range. I hope that provides some context. And again, if not, happy to answer any additional questions or try to provide some additional detail via the email. Question from Tiffany that reads, our shelter does not care for equines regularly, but we have a disaster response program that would help equines. Would our disaster response program qualify on its own? I would say yes, especially if you needed to do some kind of education, purchase some kind of equipment around your disaster response program. That is something that would qualify and something that we would consider. Somebody that could not download the application and sent email, haven't heard yet. I'll follow up on that, Alice. I do know we had some issues and we found a dead link on our website this morning. So if anybody tried to go in and download something previously, we did fix an issue on our website this morning. So you might try that again. There was a question, I'm just trying to go back through. Are there any specific priorities, priority needs you want addressed? I think within those 3 focused areas, really just trying to open it up. There's no preconceived notions of what we think should or shouldn't be shouldn't be addressed with the grant. Again, this is kind of a fact-finding year, and we like to see as many different ideas as we possibly could. So the BLM, Tracy is asking, the BLM considers wild horses domestic after title is issued. Would that be the same here? I think that's probably the best definition, is using BLM definitions to determine whether it is a domestic or a wild horse. The grant would not cover the expense for darting wild horses with fertility dose to manage the population. Again, this grant is specific to domestic equines, not their wild counterparts. And Frank is asking, are equine disaster response equipment purchases eligible? Absolutely, Frank. I think that would be a great application. And Tracy's asking, their sanctuary is housing Mustangs, no one wanted, all title. Do they qualify? Yes, Tracy, I would say they do. Grant could include improving fencing. I think anything that would be around facilities, because I know there is not a lot of money out there to help with facilities being either at an addition to a facility or an improvement to a facility. So we want to consider that an opportunity within this grant. Could this grant be for the development of curriculum to be delivered post June 30th? Absolutely. I would say the educational materials that are developed as part of this grant, I would hope that, you know, those are something that can live on and benefit individuals past June 30th. We're just need to expend the money by June 30th. And someone is asking, if you are submitting for shelter, is a 6-month budget all that is eligible with funds needing to be used by June 30th? The example, hey, we know our annual budget. Are we submitting for 6 months? Yes, but I think if you expend that money on hay and that money has been expended and that hay is going to last you beyond June 30th, that's something that's perfectly acceptable. And one more question here. Would a barn be included to house sick or injured equines taken in? Again, anything around facilities that falls within the parameters of the grant would be considered. Including funding a part of a barn, a building, anything of that nature. If I missed anything, please feel free to throw it in the Q&A, and I think I've gotten to quite a few of the questions, but may have missed a few as well. Here's one I think that I missed from Jeff. The application states not for private equines, but what about private equines used for training? Can you expand upon that, Jeff, to give me a little more context, or ask that question through email? That's something I would want a little more information before I could really answer that. Okay, I appreciate everybody joining today. Again, if there are any additional questions, please feel free to reach out through the website, or excuse me, through the email address that's provided, and we will try to get back to you as quickly as we possibly can. We look forward to receiving your grant applications, and we really look forward to how this funding is going to benefit equines across the state. Just really appreciate your time today. Thank you all so much, and I will try to get back to you on any additional questions as quick as I can.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and end the webinar, and this will be posted on our website tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.